Hello everyone, and welcome to the final panel of Day 2 of Here to Stay Baby, a Northern Intersectional Caucus. Thank you for joining us for Here to Stay Baby, the birth of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. My name is Shana Brown, and I am one of the co-presidents of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. Before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that BLM Sudbury is located in Neswagma, later known as Sudbury. This land on which we learn, work, and live is located on the traditional lands of the Atikameksheng and Anishinaabe and the Wahnapitae First Nation in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory. We would also like to recognize the presence and important contributions of Métis people in the community and on this land. Furthermore, we want to acknowledge that February marks Black History Month. While oppression, discrimination, and systemic injustices cannot be diminished to just 1 month a year, it is important to recognize this time as an opportunity to educate yourself, your family, and your friends on the historic contributions of the Black communities in Turtle Island. We would also like to take a moment to thank our conference sponsors. It is because of their generosity that we have been able to thrive and present important programming like this caucus within our northern communities. Our moderator for this panel is Gagnon, a director of the executive board of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. Our panel consists of Shana Brown, Shana Calixte, Darius Garneau, TiCarra Paquet, and Isak Vaillancourt. Biographies for our panel participants and a full list of conference sponsors can be found in our event booklet. We are pleased to offer ASL interpretation for each panel provided by the Canadian Hearing Services. Following this panel, all attendees will receive a feedback survey that can be filled out for a chance to win a prize pack of items showcasing the designs of our caucus artist, Sonia Katini. Thank you everyone for your participation in Here to Stay Baby, the birth of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. Without further ado, here is your moderator, Shana Calixte.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final caucus event. In the final caucus event, join the entire board of Black Lives Matter Sudbury to recount the birth of their organization. Panelists will discuss the impact of Black Lives Matter Sudbury thus far in the Greater Sudbury Area and how they anticipate the growth and change of the group in the coming years. To start off, I would like to go around and have our panelists introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Rihanna.
Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Shana Brown, and I am one of the co-presidents of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. So happy to be sitting alongside my founding board members and super excited that this is our last panel.
Fabulous. So let's head over to you, TiCarra.
Hi, everyone. My name is TiCarra Paquet, and I'm the other co-president of Black Lives Matter Sudbury. I'm just so excited to be here, and I'm so grateful that we have such great people wanting to participate in this Northern Caucus, and hopefully we're learning a little bit of something these last 2 days. Thanks.
It's been awesome so far. And Shana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, bonjour, honey. I'm Shana Calixte. I am the director of community relations for Black Lives Matter, and I am extremely excited to have this conversation and to chat about how fundamentally impactful this work has been in my life over the past 7 months, really.
Wonderful. So let's head over to you, to Isak.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isak Vaillancourt. I'm a multimedia artist and communications coordinator based out of Sudbury, Ontario, and the director of communications for Black Lives Matter Sudbury. I just kind of want to share a bit about my perspective and heritage too before jumping into this. So my mother immigrated from Somalia in the 90s due to the Civil War and found her way to Canada a few years later and met my father, a Franco-Ontarian. So I've been living here in Sudbury my entire life, born and raised, more specifically Chalsford, which is a smaller town 20 minutes away from Sudbury. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here today talking with good friends.
And then Darius, last but not least.
Hi, so my name is Darius Garneau, he, him. I'm a volunteer with BLM, and I'm happy to be back with the board members for to wrap up this awesome event so far.
Excited to be here with you. So we'll just jump right into the first question. I'll start a few questions maybe on a rotation, make sure everyone has a chance to speak. So what does it mean when you hear Black Lives Matter? Rihanna?
So I mean, when I hear people say it, it means that they understand us and the movement and fundamentally our lives, I think, because it's one of those things where if I don't say Black Lives Matter, I feel like I don't have this space. And like, if we don't fight for Black Lives Matter, it's like we don't have this space, we don't have this platform, we don't have this this community that, because you hear people say all lives matter. It's like all lives matter don't matter until Black Lives Matter, until Indigenous lives matter, and all this stuff. So when saying Black Lives Matter, it's like you understand fundamentally the disproportionate discrimination and oppression that the Black community is facing. It's that people really understand where we are coming from. They really understand how society was built against us. So I think that's what it means when I hear Black Lives Matter, but also it means community. Like, you all are my family now after months of working together, and I love you all so much. So it's like, it's family, it's friends, it's community, it's mutual aid, it's therapy, it's so many things to us.
Wonderful. And TiCarra, what does it mean when you hear Black Lives Matter?
Well, in the Canadian Charter Rights and Freedoms, it states that, everyone in Canada has an equal right to life, liberty, and security of the person. But right now, Black people are still fighting for their right to life. So when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean Black lives are allowed to have, accessible healthcare, accessible and quality education, that they're allowed to have equal opportunity for employment. They're allowed to thrive in this country, and most importantly, that they have their right to life. So I think that's what it means.
Powerful. Shana, what does it mean when you hear Black Lives Matter?
Well, for me, it means joy. It means hope. It means possibilities. I haven't experienced this kind of connection in a long time, since moving here to what we now call Sudbury. And I think, we know what people think of. We know the contentious feelings that people have when they hear Black Lives Matter. But for me, it's just about all those things that have opened up and all those possibilities that are available for us to speak our truth when I think about Black Lives Matter. And I see, a worldwide, a global movement, that's had impact, not only on, systems and discussions, but on, individual Black people who may be here in Northern Ontario feeling really isolated. So when, they see that there's a Black Lives Matter chapter in Sudbury, for them, I think it means that there's a possibility, that there's hope. And of course, I think it means joy, right? That we're making change.
Definitely. Isak, what does it mean when you hear Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I think for me, it means intersectionality, of course. And it's important for folks to remember, that this movement was founded by 3 Black queer women, and Black queer voices have always been at the center of this movement. And historically in Canada's, queer rights movement exists because of Black people. So it's important to remember that. And I know that here at Black Lives Matter Sudbury, we're rooted in the intersectional framework and make sure that we bring that to everything we do. And so when you hear Black Lives Matter, it's also Black Trans Lives Matter and Black Queer Lives Matter. So I just wanted to add that as well.
And then Darius, what does it mean to you when you hear Black Lives Matter?
I see it as the start of understanding, a symbol for beginning allyship almost, and acceptance, and this door into sort of a larger world of what it means to be there for each other, right? And to understand issues that might not be affecting you. And when I hear it, I think of it as a promise, right? That people are going to take the time to understand that they can't understand, and that they're going to do what they can to be constantly learning and try to be vigilant, and that they're going to try to continue that allyship. I think that's what it really is when you say that. I think it's kind of a pledge in a lot of ways. So.
Awesome. So for the next question, TiCarra, I'm going to throw it to you first. How has your involvement in this chapter affected or impacted your work, education, life?
Well, for starters, one of the main reasons that I got involved within this social movement to begin with is because my cousin, Regis Korchinski-Paquet, died due to police intervention. You know, they were called to handle a domestic situation, but, you know, the police didn't operate within proper protocol, nor would they know how to de-escalate a mental health situation. And this resulted in my cousin losing her life. Now, with this organization specifically, I'm a person of mixed race. I'm Black and Indigenous. And my experience within Sudbury has always been difficult for me to have a sense of identity or cultural awareness, because you know, this is a very it's a very white city, and you know, Black Lives Matter allowed me to have a space where I could be friends, make friends with people. And you know what? You guys continue. My phone's going off. My apologies.
Somebody's like, "You're on the internet."
Shana, I'm actually gonna throw it to you next.
Sure.
Anyway, so good you jumped in. So
yeah, no problem.
How's your involvement affected?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in what we now call Ottawa, and then I spent 10 years in Toronto, what we now call Toronto, and I had a huge community there and did a lot of activist work there. And so when I moved here into the city, I was really worried, and my partner at the time will tell you that, like, I was like, how are we going to create community? And so I tried quite a bit to find community, and I did. I did a good job at finding queer and feminist community, but one thing that I was lacking was a real connection to Black people. And so as many of you know, this chapter started around June, and directly in response to what was happening around the world. And when I came to the first meeting with folks, I was really nervous. I remember thinking, these folks have got it going on. And I mean, like, I have years of activist experience, years of background, but I just saw these very young folks who were just like, they knew what they wanted and knew what they were doing. And, at first I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then it just became part of my life. And I remember once thinking we were having meetings every week, and I was like, I can't do this every week. And now I look forward to meetings every week. And I think that's because I was looking for that connection, as I've said before, looking for that community and needing that very important space where Black people can come together and just have a conversation about it, what it means to survive in this city, right? In this city that has legacies of colonization, white supremacy, we have, neo-fascist groups, doing their work. And where do you go to have those conversations? And I am so thankful and so lucky to be able to meet with folks every week and be able to have an outlet to talk about that. And so it's really impacted my friendships. It's impacted my view of the work I do every day. I work in public health, the work I do in education. It has given me, I've always had this lens, but it's a lens that is grounded in that lived experience. And it is so wonderful I feel so privileged and lucky to be able to have a part of this work that we're doing right now.
Yeah, it's funny, when you're starting out something like this, you tend to only think about like the labor involved, but I think all of us have found our lives so deeply enriched through this community. Isak, how has your involvement in the chapter impacted your work and your life?
Yeah, just to echo what Shana said, it is such a big part of my life now. And back in June, I had no idea that I would be embarking on this journey, but I am so happy to have you guys in my life. And I've made so many meaningful connections through Black Lives Matter Sudbury. And we've been able to create spaces for marginalized communities to thrive, like events like this conference. So I'm very thankful to have met all of you, and I'm really excited for the future, but we'll talk about that later.
Yes, we will. Darius, how has your involvement in the chapter impacted your life?
Well, I have Black friends in the city now, so that's pretty cool. I think that was important, something that I didn't know I was really lacking until I had it. So that's been really good. The sense of community that I didn't know that I needed, that I finally gained. I think that in general, it's affected me in the sense that when it comes to planning and organizing things that are really important, I'm less careful. I've learned so much from being in this group in general that I probably would have pretended to think I knew before, but I didn't actually. So it's nice to finally to know more than I thought I did. So yeah.
That been a short time, but there's been so much growth, eh? Yeah. And then lastly, Rihanna, how has this impacted your life?
I mean, so positively, so positively. And it's like, as everyone was talking, I was like, I remember coming into this panel, I was like, okay, this is the last panel and it's with the people I love the most. And it's like, I was like, okay, don't cry in the last panel. And you guys make me want to cry so much. But I feel like my life truly began, working with Black Lives Matter and with all of you. And it's like, before this summer, I was like a shell of the person that I was meant to become. And it was like doing this work. I'm sorry, I'm getting so emotional, but I just love this work and these people so much. And it's like, my life really began. Sorry. I'm just so happy and I love everybody here so much.
Someone get her some Kleenex, please.
Oh my God, get all of us some Kleenex. Okay, moving on. So Shane, I'm going to start with you. If at the start of this organization, you knew all the things you did now about activism, working in Sudbury and so on, what would you have done differently?
So, as I mentioned, I've, been engaged in activism for quite a bit, for about 20 years or so. And so, activism, sorry, I'm still crying from so activism isn't really new to me. And so, I knew a lot about activism. I knew the barriers, I knew the challenges, I knew the connections you could make, but also the bridges you can burn, right? I knew about a lot of those things. And I think what I've learned and what I've seen, and especially working with Black Lives Matter, but also doing some feminist organizing right before this, is that you can push, you can really push. And I think people think, oh, we're in Sudbury, we're in Northern Ontario, right? We can't do that. And you couldn't possibly get people to have that conversation. And, you can't show up to council meetings and ask questions. And, and yes, you can. Yes, you really can. And you can have an impact. And I know that there are a lot of haters out there, maybe watching us right now, who like to pile up on Black Lives Matter. But if you have like a growing, supportive base of people and friendships like this, you can really make some transformative change in your community. And so now, I know that, an idea might seem like out in left field, like, maybe a calendar or something like that with all of us posing for 1 month a year.
Okay.
But really, doing a ground mural and then doing, going to council and then doing this caucus. And now we got a book club coming. Like, we are just churning out a virtual museum. The things that we've been able to do in such a short amount of time, right? And not only have we been able to do it, we've done it in an inclusive way. We've translated it. We've tried our best to make sure that we position the voices of people's lived experience at the front. Like, we can do anything. And so now I just think, like, I'm not going to poo-poo anything, right? I'm going to give it a try. And I know that we can do it.
Fantastic. Definitely agree with everything. So Isak, what about you? If you knew everything you did now when you got into this, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I think I would remind myself that this is a marathon and not a sprint. I think when we first started, we all hit the ground running and we quickly realized that we're producing stuff at a really fast rate, but obviously that does take its toll on the people behind the scenes. So it's important to remember that we can't do this work if we're running on empty. Like I mentioned, we started organizing in June in the middle of a pandemic that disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and POCs. So there's already this extra layer of grief and turmoil on top of this already really difficult work. And, you know, many of us are used to supporting our community in person, but being forced to physically distance ourselves from our loved ones and organizing groups, you know, really amplified those feelings of hopelessness and divide. So I wish I was more aware of those symptoms of kind of like exhaustion, cynicism, questioning my self-worth and stuff. But not to get sappy because we just finished being sappy. But one thing that has really helped me, you know, is the collective of folks we have here at Black Lives Matter Sudbury, and, you know, the people on this call specifically. You know, I've become really great friends with all of you, and we have such a fantastic support system, and we truly are a collective, and we're going through this experience together. And it's really comforting knowing that I'm not doing this alone.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Darius, on to you. If you knew everything you know now when you got started, what would you do differently?
I probably would have tried to tell myself to pace myself emotionally a little bit, just because it is kind of like Isaac said, right? I think that it is a lot. And the groups that I volunteered for and the events I've helped done with the other groups before, it's not the same. And this is a lot more personal. And I think that at the end of the day, doing this is about me. And I think that I underestimated how emotionally that would be to like be advocating for my own rights and stuff. I didn't think that, I didn't know how hard it was going to be. And I think that if I did, I would have probably have tried to prep myself a little bit better, that I'm willing to have to try and convince people that my life is worth something, and that it takes a little bit of, I just didn't know what I signed up for right away. But also, I think that looking at past activism, I think that the other things that I've done have mainly been, you know, getting money to sponsor events like this, or showing up for the one event to help out, or the day of. But I think that this is probably the deepest into an organization I've ever got in the community when it comes to activism. And I wish that I knew for some of those other times that there is merit to sticking around and to giving it the long haul with some of these other groups. So
those are great insights. Thank you. So Rihanna, on to you.
I promise I won't cry again. I went into that question. I was like, I had a list of things I was going to say. But I definitely would have gotten involved sooner, I think, with activism, because I was so hesitant and afraid at the beginning. So I was like, what do I know? First of all, do I know anything? Will anyone even care about what I have to say? And it was just like, at the beginning, I was just like dipping a toe in the water. I'd go to rallies and not say anything, or I just kind of stand on the sides. In fact, the first rally that I went to, Shana and a couple of others did at the courthouse, and I went there and I was so afraid that I stood behind my white partner and his white brother, and I was like, I'm not gonna let anybody see me, because I was so nervous. But so just knowing that, like, I would have known that like my voice could carry so much weight, and I definitely would have said more things and like put my heart and soul into it from the beginning, because at the beginning I was so anxious, but now it's like BLM is my everything. And it's like, you know, this huge part of me, to the point where I was like, hey, I remember coming to Sudbury and being like, I'm going to leave the city and like go do more education elsewhere, to the point where I'm like, hey, I want to do a PhD outside of the city. And I'm literally torn internally, being like, but I can't leave BLM because it's just like my everything. So I definitely would have just like told me, like, get involved, go say something, speak out, speak up. Because now it's very much like, I see something and I'm like, that's racist. Somebody do something, and like calling out people on social media. And like, I'm like, I have zero patience for anything. So definitely cultivating a lot of that speaking out energy more earlier, I think.
Fantastic. TiCarra, what about you? I think you still, there you go.
Hopefully I won't get interrupted again. But no, but just to add to like what everyone has said, I think, you know, at the beginning of my activism work, one of the things that I wish I would have known then is that the power really does belong to the people. And that I find in society, or, you know, just within my own experience, I had a difficult time, you know, facing organizations political figures or, you know, people that I found were superior to me given their position in society or their economic wealth or, you know, but really any person, if they have a cause or if they want to get involved, there is power in the people. And yeah, that, and, you know, the work that we do here is very emotionally taxing, and especially because a lot of us have had lived experience or are living this type of experience. So honestly, if I would have known that I could have had such a great group like this to go through this with, then honestly, I wouldn't have been so, not scared, but I know having this group with me, we kind of heal each other and support each other, which I really appreciate.
We appreciate you too, TiCarra. So for the next question, I'm actually going to start with you, Isak. As a Black Lives Matter activist, what would you like to see change or happen in the North?
Yeah, well, I would love to see like a coalition of organizations that support our demands in relation to defunding the police and reinvesting into communities. Sometimes it's hard to identify which organizations are in support of us and are considered allies and which organizations may not totally be in line with what we're doing. But I know those folks are out there. And throughout this conference this weekend, I've been able to make a lot of meaningful connections. So I'm hoping that this weekend can be a jumping start to forming that coalition. And I would also love to see more educational programming and changes to the school curriculum, of course. We know in Canada, history is taught one way. It's a whitewashed, Eurocentric way. And, you know, kids are not exposed to the rich and diverse history of Black Canadians. So I would love to see more inclusivity within school curriculums as well.
Fantastic. Darius, what about you? What would you like to see change in the North?
Probably more supports. I think more support systems for BIPOC individuals, specialized mental health services, just things that already exist for white people, basically, but implemented in a way that could be for everyone, right? And not even necessarily just Black people, but just, you know, Indigenous social work and the proper supports for the community. Honestly, I think that the best part about being a part of this organization is it hasn't been just about advocating for ourselves, but just trying to make our city and the North better in general. So I think that's kind of the direction that I want the North to go. So.
Fantastic. Rihanna, what about you?
I mean, definitely I'd like to see an institution in which we are taken seriously for what we say and for the work that we are doing, where it's actually recognized as important work. Because right now the work we are doing is so incredibly important, but a lot of it's just like brushed under the rug. You know, we say things and people are like, oh, but that's not really serious. Yes, but no, but like where we're actually, you know, there is institutional validity in our work. And then it's not just us having to back and defend what we are doing. You know, I'd like to see a community in which when the alt-right is assembling, the people aren't trying to tell us, well, you shouldn't say anything, where people are actually taking this serious and like, this is a legitimate danger to the community, and where it's actually being addressed when certain rallies are transpiring or certain people are trying to speak at council. It's not like the last minute of people being like, oh, how did this person get here? Where when we say this is happening and this is important, that we are being recognized and taken seriously for the work that we are doing, because we shouldn't have to keep justifying ourselves as activists or as Black people based on our lived experience. They should be able to look at us and say, well, look at the work that Black Lives Matter has done globally within Canada, but also within Sudbury as a whole, the work that we have done, and where they actually take us seriously. Because, you know, it's exhausting, A, to do the work, but B, to have to do the work and then also be like, but no, really take me seriously, you know, a place where I can say, you know, Black Lives Matter, and people aren't saying, but why? They're saying, oh, no, you said it, and we understand. Where I say defund the police, and they're not saying why, where they're saying, well, look at this plethora of research that has been done, and people can understand that, and I don't have to defend myself.
Fantastic. And TiCarra, what about you? What would you like to see change or happen in the North?
Well, I want to see an end to the over-policing of Black and Indigenous bodies in the North. you know, the Ford government is planning on having 500 new police officers in the north. But why, when we have these northern communities where Indigenous reservations are poorly infrastructured, or, you know, they don't have clean running water, where we have Black communities or Black families, you know, ridden with mental health or, you know, addiction or poverty. We're in the middle of an opioid crisis, but, you know, we want to, the GSPS wants to increase our police budget. Or how about let's look into investing in rehabilitation programs or alternatives that can better this community. There's the homelessness in Sudbury is profound, and yet there still seems to be like the biggest thing that this settler society wants is for there to be policing of these bodies, so that Indigenous people can't have their inherent rights or claim their inherent rights to the land or governance, and so that Black bodies can still be the foundation of society, which are the underpinnings in which white people profit off of. So what do I want to see in the north? I want to see accountability. I want to see the end of over-policing. I want to see you know, equitable education. I just want the same opportunity as everyone else.
Yes. And then on to you, Shana. What change do you want to see?
I mean, my colleagues have laid it out, right? I mean, everything that I've heard so far, exactly, I echo that strongly. And so, you know, what's left for me to say is that I would like my 3 Black kids to feel like this is their place, right? Understanding their complex relationship on a land that's been stolen, you know, understanding that white supremacy, you know, continues to be part of their educational institutions, understanding that even though all of these barriers are up around them, that they can still thrive in this community. So I want more loving, nurturing, welcoming spaces for Black and Indigenous peoples. I want to see a coalition between Black and Indigenous peoples where we recognize our similarities, but also understand that we have differences, where we are, you know, accountable to each other, but also support each other. I want us to show up for each other in ways that are meaningful and that can change people's feelings and lives. You know, there's definitely potential and power in those connections. And I think that, you know, if all of the things that we've just listed can change in the north, we can have those spaces available for us. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's the transformative work I think that Black Lives Matter does.
Very much agree. I love that you ended on such a hopeful, forward-looking, optimistic note, because I don't think these are wild fantasies, right? Like, these are things that can happen. We can see a lot of this change in our lifetimes. And so, speaking of which, what's next for Black Lives Matter Sudbury? What's an initiative that's upcoming that you're really looking forward to? So I'll throw it to Darius first.
Yeah, loaded question. Maybe pass?
Yeah, fair enough. Brianna, do you want to start?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. So much. What is the next for Black Lives Matter Sudbury? Like, honestly, sky's the limit. And I think there's so much we're talking about. Like, I don't want to hint at too much because like we're still starting things out, but like Black arts festivals, maybe a gala calendar probably at some point if TiCarra has her way, you know, like there's so many things that we want to do already. Like, this event's not even over and I'm already thinking like, okay, Northern Caucus 2, we can do this. Okay, in 5 years we can do this for the caucus. Like, Northern Caucus all the time and different intersectional events. I'm talking educational activities for youth, because, you know, this was like very geared towards everybody, but like, how can we start with educating the youth? What programming can we do? What things can we do for Black History Month next year? You know, how can we turn Black History Month into Black Futures Month? How can we really start to cultivate a community? More murals, more more everything. And I think we've really started to tap into this market of things that this dearth of activities for inclusion in Sudbury. And I think that there's so much potentials, direct actions and rallies and marches, but also like I said, educational opportunities for the community, really creating a wide breadth of resources for folks, because, you know, there's so many things that we are lacking, but there's so many groups that are there that are doing the work already, that how can we start to network with one another? And I think a big, beautiful intersectional coalition is like this dream down the line. And also, I mean, I have this massive vision of just like Black Lives Matter Northern Ontario, like this massive chapter, because like this weekend we've heard from folks from like Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie, and we know there's work going on in Timmins. So how can we create, like, I have this dream of this big, beautiful conference where we all just get together in the North. It's all these Northern communities coming together to really rally one another. And we're starting to connect with Black Lives Matter Global. How can we network with these other chapters across Canada, and then maybe across Turtle Island in general, and just like, it's just honestly just building the network and this intersectional work and really raising the bar for ourselves each year.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the trouble with this question, is like, once you start listing what is planned, it's like, it's hard to stop. There's so much that we are going to do, right? TiCarra, what's something that you're looking forward? What's next for you in Black Lives Matter Sudbury?
Well, definitely a calendar eventually. That's a running joke. If you guys watching, that's a running joke we have about a calendar. So that's why we've been saying it. But what's next? You know, I want Black Lives Matter to, you know, infiltrate the institutions, the systems, you know. We want to be, one thing that I do, if I go anywhere new or if I'm with new company, I like to kind of facilitate conversations just about Black Lives Matter, because I want to normalize these type of discussions just in everyday conversation. So I just want, you know, Black Lives Matter to just be a normal conversation for people to kind of understand and be a part of, and, you know, see what they can do for the movement.
Fabulous. Shana, what about you?
Oh boy, I mean, there's just so much. And yeah, we already, if you want to know, we already have things planned moving forward. So I mean, we aren't going to stop. So in case anybody out there thought this was the end, it certainly is not the end. But I think that I would love to see more Black people involved in Black Lives Matter. We've got quite a number of people involved. We have an amazing number of volunteers, allies, accomplices who, you know, without them, this wouldn't be what it is. And so it's really important. I want to say that out loud to thank all of them. And some of them are watching, and, you know, it's been fantastic to do that work alongside people who are devoting their, you know, every Tuesday night to this work, right? And I think that I really want to see more Black people energized around this. So my hope is that we can build definitely more coalitions, as TiCarra has mentioned and Ran has mentioned, but also want to see, you know, more Black people just know that, like, this is the space for you, right? And I know Black Lives Matter, saying you're on the Black Lives Matter board, or I get it, right? Like, people are going to give you sideways looks, right? We're here to help you get through that part if that happens, right? Because this is the space for you. This is the future, right? This is our glorious, fantastic future. And, you know, if you are interested at all, I would love for you to join. So for me, what's on deck is to try to grow this organization internally, and to, you know, provide more spaces for Black people specifically, but definitely BIPOC folks and other folks, allies and accomplices, to do this work, because it's so rewarding. It's tiring, it takes a lot out of you, but it is so rewarding. And to see people, like, you'll see all the comments, you know, that, you know, how much they've learned this weekend, how much they've enjoyed this weekend, how people have watched every single panel this weekend. You know, that is just so rewarding. And so I would love more people to be able to become involved.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, Shana. And it must look so intimidating and inaccessible from the outside, even the idea of giving every Tuesday night. But like, something that we have tried to accomplish from the beginning was accessibility. So yes, like Shana said, please like reach out, even ask the questions. Especially if you're a Black person living in Sudbury, like there's so many ways we want to and can accommodate and just want to work in solidarity with you. Yeah. So then on to Isak. What about you? What's next for Black Lives Matter Sudbury?
Yeah, while everyone was talking, I was like, oh yes, that's a great idea. And that's a great idea. So I hope someone was writing that down so we could talk about that later. But for myself, you know, something I've been exploring is artivism. And I know that Rihanna and I are very passionate about this. And I know some of our members are extremely passionate about this. So I just want to talk about that. It's combining art and activism together. And it's something we've explored in the past and something we want to explore in the future. For me, artivism can be a form of self-expression, a coping mechanism, a way of challenging power dynamics, and an opportunity to make political statements, right? There are many forms. It could be pieces like posters, music, community art projects such as our ground mural, or you know, just creative actions with activists who might not consider themselves artists, but still express themselves in that playful way. So examples like Ethereal, the photo installation that we worked on that centralized Black beauty, particularly that of hair, and offered a social commentary on Black identity. Another example, the short documentary that was released in December in collaboration with Up Here. And we were able to offer that platform for 3 Black women in Sudbury residences to share their experiences, and it was great. So more of that in the future, for sure.
Fabulous. So we've just got a little bit of time left before we head to Q&A. So I thought it might be fun to open up the floor a little bit and we can maybe have like a little bit of a retrospective. It's kind of wild. We've only been active for the past 9 months, not even a full year, and incorporated for even less, but it's wild to look back on everything we've accomplished, and it's easy for some of those projects to get lost. So I don't know if somebody has a favorite or a huge moment that they want to jump in and start sharing.
I mean, this caucus, of course, this was like a pipe dream. I was like, let's have a 2-day conference. We can do it. But also I was like, this is never going to happen. How are we going to mobilize so many people? So this is definitely something beautiful in itself. But I mean, probably my favorite project that I think definitely the Juneteenth rally. Like, it wasn't the first rally that we did, but it was like, to me, like, that was my first time speaking publicly. And I literally remember going up there and shaking, and everything was shaking. My bones were shaking. My heart was pounding. And I was like, I'm about to speak out against an institution right now. And I was like so scared, but I remember we did it. And the next thing I knew, I was screaming on the Bridge of Nations. We weren't on the sidewalks. Everyone was chanting. I could see TiCarra across from me with her megaphone. And it was like, this is what empowerment feels like. And it was just like, I just filled with like excitement and anger, and everything was pouring out. All these beautiful people were supporting us, and it was just like, I mean, so frequently we're like, this isn't a moment. It's a moment in the movement, you know, it's so much bigger. And for me, that was like the moment that like where it all clicked for me. I remember being like, oh, well, this lasts, you know, the activism will be like a summer trend or whatever. And I was like, this is it. I was like, this is a turning point, not only in the lives of all these people, but this is a turning point in my life where I was like, I am in it and I will never not be in it. Like, you know, where you just like, where someone pulled back the veil and I finally see the big picture, and in seeing the big picture, I know that the picture is even bigger. And it was like, I can't unsee what I have seen. And it was just like so magical. And I was so thankful to be sharing that space with so many people. And I was like, how did we mobilize this? Because we weren't even a full organization at the time. We were literally like a Facebook chat group of just like a bunch of people super all over the place. And like, we had no structure, and we did that. And I was like, the sky's the limit. We have endless opportunities. And this was like in my head right there. And I was like, Black Lives Matter Sudbury, we're going to make it happen. And I remember at the beginning, we all were like, should we make it an official chapter? And I was like, and in that moment, I was like, this is it. And this is going to be so much bigger than any one of us.
I would just love to add off of that, if that's okay. I remember the first Black Lives Matter rally that I attended, the courthouse protest at the end of May. And I remember my friend getting a text being like, courthouse this time, show up. And I thought to myself, am I really going to do this? Am I really going to organize during the middle of the pandemic? And, you know, walking there, I didn't realize how many people would be there. I didn't know who was organizing it. I didn't know much, right? But when I got there, I saw so many people that I've never seen before in Sudbury. I saw this diverse community of Black, Indigenous, and people of color that I have never really seen before. And I thought to myself, wow, these people are in Sudbury and this work is happening. So I know Shana and a few of her allies were behind coordinating that event. And I just wanted to publicly thank Shana for getting the ball rolling, because if it was not for that event, I don't think we would be here today talking.
Thanks, Isaac. I think though, like, to be honest, it was, I mean, because we showed up, we stood there, we were like, yep, we did a couple things. I remember my kids were like, let's get out of here. We got into the car, we left. And then Monique, who works with us, was just like, they marched to the police station. I was like, what? Right? So, I mean, really the energy just began. And I think, you know, I went to that. I went to the protest that was on the bridge that I think, TiCarra, you were involved with on that. And then Juneteenth. And I was just amazed, right? Just amazed. The number of people at Juneteenth was just, and I couldn't even stay for the whole thing, right? And I just remember I was sitting in the back, just watching and just thinking like, look at this, right? Look at the power that this has. And we've had many demos since then, and we still get a great group of people coming out. And so, you know, this is what I think I remember the most, is that, you know, the energy, the momentum that we created back then, that you all created back then, and that we've kept going since then, it's not going to end. And so that for me has been sort of the linchpin of this movement, right? Is that we've got it. And now, you know, my hope is that we can, you know, kind of connect with people who've been doing activism in the city for many, many years, Black, Indigenous folks who've been, you know, at the forefront of this, and ask them and just say like, you know, what are your thoughts about this? How do we continue, right? Because I think that for me is the most important, is to recognize all the work that's been done before, you know, a number of us have come along, and to build off of that work. So for me, that is sort of like how it's moved in my mind.
I think the big one for me is probably the city council presentation. Honestly, what I love most about it is just how many people we ended up making understand what defund the police actually meant. Even if council themselves didn't really understand, by the end of it, there was, you know, comments about everyone being immigrants and all sorts of good stuff. But I mean, I think that it was really cool to finally show everybody that like, this is what this means, and this is a good thing for everybody, and that it's something that everybody should be getting on board with. And I think that we really did open up the community's eyes to what everything meant. And yeah, no, the support for defunding the police in Greater Sudbury is huge. So even if the people who have the power to do so don't, I mean, power to the people, right? So
yeah, and I think my favorite event, just like everyone else kind of has said, was probably Juneteenth. You know, it was a great way to educate, you know, Sudbury's community about our history with slavery, and, you know, the history of Black Nova Scotians in the country. So it was good to educate them on that, but also, yeah, like the feeling that you get from being a part of these protests and these rallies. And like, hopefully the audience could really like hear these stories when we tell you that there's no better feeling, or like, it feels like you're high on life, the energy, you know, everyone's just there. It's a community coming together in unity type of thing. So yeah, that was spectacular. And it was kind of fun playing the song F the Police with the police there. So yeah.
Yes. It's so great to look back. And I can't wait until Northern Caucus 2, where we're looking back on even more. I'm gonna head into the audience Q&A. So first question, folks who are originally from outside of Sudbury, what are some of the barriers that you've faced in the North in regards to your activism or work or education that maybe never occurred in your previous communities? Rihanna, Shana, do either of you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, that's a big one. Because I think like, I mean, one of the things, this wasn't really a barrier, but it was something that I noticed was like, when I came here, I was able to be like, that's racist right away. Like something would happen to me and I was like, oh, this is racist. And it made me, honestly, not really a barrier, but it kind of opened my eyes to what racism could look like. And then it made me reflect on the rest of my life, of all these forms, these other things that I had to deal with in life that I didn't necessarily clock as racism at the time, because I was like, oh, we're in a diverse community. And you know, I was that kid that was like, I'm in a diverse community and racism doesn't exist here. And I just didn't understand. And then coming to Sudbury, I was like, oh, no, pump the brakes. This is racism. But in terms of barriers for me, it was like, I was trying to do research work, you know, studying racialized themed topics. And it was like, no, is this racist? Is this not racist? Is that everybody's always questioning what I'm doing? And then just dealing with people, you know, because growing up in Brampton, it was like I would say something, and if somebody questioned it, it was like, because did you have the education knowledge? Like, they're questioning my education. I'm like, whatever. But then when I was in Sudbury, the barrier was, okay, I'm going to say this, and I'd get someone would question it, and it was like, because I'm Black, they're questioning it. Or, I mean, it could have also been because I was a woman. Neither are great, but like, it was like, now I'm being questioned, not because of my educational level, which is already like whatever, but it's like, now I'm being questioned because I'm Black. Are my experiences valid? Is my lived experience actually, what am I saying? Like, you know, do people actually understand it, and this and that? So I think that was a really huge barrier. And in terms of work, I think like, even in my job now, like, you know, you're doing work and like somebody says something racist and it's like, okay, here's a barrier. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of issues happening in the Greater Toronto Area, the GTA, but it's like, something happens there and they're like you even look at the work that they're doing now in terms of educational institutions. They have equity and diversity committees that have been running for years. They have positions created specifically for tenured Black faculty. And I'm like, where's that here? That's a huge barrier. You know, I'm a young aspiring Black academic, and it was like horrifying to try to find a job where I could still do this kind of work, because the jobs just don't exist here. And it's just something where the educational institution doesn't really, you know, they're not supporting us in that. And like, even like when I was looking to start doing PhD research, I was looking at like institutions like Dalhousie and U of T and they were saying like, you could minor in Black Canadian studies. And let's just take a moment to sit that in. I was like, I could minor in that? I came to Sudbury, and it was like, that wasn't even an option. All the research I had to do was myself, and that was a huge barrier. And I mean, in hindsight, I'm a firm believer in everything working out for a reason, because like, if I didn't come here, I wouldn't have met all these great people. But it's like, stuff like that is a huge barrier, because like, I wanted to stay in Sudbury to do my PhD, and I legitimately could not, because there's nobody here with the expertise, or there are people here with the expertise, but the institution is not built in a way which will help me as a student flourish, where I can even like major in something of that regard.
Yeah, I'll be very quick, very brief. I mean, all of that, and you know, one of the things that I think, I have experienced barriers. I'm not saying that I haven't, but I've also experienced that sort of tokenism, like gross tokenism, right? Where I'm asked to speak about certain things. I'm asked to be the example for certain things. And so that's been really hard. I think the other thing that I wasn't really prepared for. So as I said, I was born in Ottawa, lived in Toronto for 10 years. I'm not used to being the only, right? I'm the only Black person in this room, or the only Black person at this, this meeting. I'm not used to being touched. Like, that's the other thing, is that I get touched so often in Sudbury. Well, not much anymore because of the pandemic. So yay for that, I guess. But like, people would just touch me and comment on my body and comment on my, like that stuff, like that just wears you down, right? Like that stuff just wears you down. And so it doesn't matter how much education I have, or, I have, a lot of class privilege, right? And so, which I think through and try to think about that positionality, it just doesn't matter, right? Like, I am seen as a Black woman, I'm queer, but I'm seen as a Black woman, who can speak well to these things and can speak, I'm so articulate and all that kind of stuff. I mean, all of this stuff just really wears on you. And so, I think because of my class position, I haven't had as many barriers as a result. But it's those other pieces, being able to recognize that those institutional barriers, trying to speak back against them, and, being seen as the one who's talking about race again, or, oh yes, the one talking about homophobia again, or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, some of those things have been really detrimental to sort of living and working in this city, to the point where I'm sure many of us have thought, like, I don't want to be here anymore, right? I want to go somewhere else. But I have 3 children who live here now, and so I'm committed to here until at least the last one's 18, right? So, you know, I've got that to do. So, yeah, you know, it's been hard to sort of to move through some of that the quagmire of that racism. But again, right, this connection here is what's helping me do that.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to head into the next question. So, and I'll open the floor again for this one, just for folks to share ideas. But what are some of the key points you're taking away from this weekend? What would you identify as priorities, things to follow up on, future projects, etc.?
I could start us off with that.
Yeah, thank you, Isaac.
Yeah, for sure. Well, people are ready to have these conversations, you know? When we were planning this caucus, we're like, do people even want to talk about this? Are people ready to have these conversations in a Northern context? Because, you know, a lot of these conversations are either looked at from a national perspective or from an American perspective, and we haven't really had an online space for voices from all across Northern Ontario. So we weren't really sure how it would be received. So it's very nice to be reading the messages and reading the comments of people who are so happy that this is here and are ready to take next steps to learn. So I think it's a matter of offering more of this. Yeah.
I think
I would add, oh.
No, sorry, go ahead, TiCarra.
No, I would just add that, you know, it's kind of funny how, you know, us, a grassroots group like this organization, which we all come from different levels of whatever expertise or whatever, could create a 2-day kind of series like this, educating people on stuff that's not even like apparent within like educational institutions or, you know, just different systems. So it's like, you know, now we're having these conversations. So now we're kind of pointing at those in power, like, see what we did in 2 days, you know, like there needs to be change, and there needs to be more of these conversations in different capacities within the institutions.
Darius, do you want to circle back to what you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we got to set up that Defund the Police Coalition, because organizations are on board with it. I think that people want to know how to help, and I think that it would be really good to have some of those other organizations step out so that we could kind of identify who's on board with this, and maybe create a group around this with some of those shared goals. Because I find that that really is the barrier for a lot of that's one of our biggest barriers when it comes to partnering with other groups. They usually jump on with all the other things, and then they get to the one and they're like, no, but it's a part of what BLM is, right? So I think that that's something that I would like to see happen pretty soon. As for what's next, so.
Can I just add one thing just quickly, just to echo what TiCarra said? You know, this has been like a diverse, inclusive, radical, bilingual, you know, event that was put on by folks, volunteers, right? People keep saying to me like, oh, well, how did you get such a diverse set of panelists? And and everything was translated. And so like folks have more resources than us, right? This is not impossible. And so, you know, folks can do better. And this is, to me, this is a call to folks to do better, right? People keep saying, no one's coming to our table, right? Like, okay, so here, we made our own table, right? We made our own table and we're talking around that table. And I think this is a point that I think Rihanna was talking about. We built our own table, we're having these conversations, but like this was a lot of work, but it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. And folks have a lot more resources than we do, and therefore can do better. So for me, that's just a little comment I want to say is that, you know, we've done something pretty awesome. And so yay, pat on the back for all of us. But like, there's a number of people out there who have a lot of more resources who could do this and even more.
Fabulous. Yeah. I think that's a powerful call to action for some other orgs in the city, I think. So on to the next question. Can you talk about the experience of presenting to City Council? What would you like them to know about the way that they treated you, and what do they need to do differently? So Rihanna, TiCarra, Darius, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I have so much to say about this. I mean, First of all, for people who live streamed it, it was quite a fiasco. And I mean, I won't sugarcoat, I'll just be honest in saying it was honestly kind of what I expected, but what I had hoped would not happen. You know, we went there, we were incredibly prepared. We presented 3 incredibly reasonable demands. And I will say demands, I know we say demands and people are like, oh, your questions? No, these were demands. They were necessary demands that we were asking of city council, and they let us down, you know, but it's one of those things where I went in with low expectations and I came in and was like, yeah, we got the reactions but it's like, it was hard because you go in there and you're like, you know, especially having the community of BLM where we sit down and we'll say defund the police and we're all like, yes, this is why we understand. But then you go into a room like that and you basically have people with an all lives matter type vibe, and you're like, this is not it. And, you know, people are saying, oh, you know, we're all marginalized, us as all immigrants. And it's like, no, this is a very incredibly different experience that you are clearly not understanding, because it's not about from where you hail. We are talking about the color of your skin, because you can hail from any corner of the planet and be a different, you know, we're talking about your race. And that is something that people are not grasping. But I think it was one of those things where I was so angry. And at one point I started laughing because I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. It was like something out of a movie. Like it was so ridiculous. I couldn't make up what was happening. But it was just, I was angry. And then we walk out of the room and we walk into the Sudbury Theatre Center and we go in there and everyone's just clapping. They're just clapping for us. And we sit down there and they're like, that was ridiculous. And to see all these people back with me, I was like, yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it takes city council to make this change, but we're going to keep fighting for this. We're going to keep pushing for this. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, people are like, well, why don't you come join our committees and whatever, you know, Shana was talking about the table. And I've said this a million times and I will keep saying it. I don't care if people call me out for it. I don't want a seat at your racist table. Like Shana said, we made our own table. We will have these discussions, and we walked out of there and people were applauding us because they knew the work that we did was so important, and it was so vilifying and empowering. And it's just like, it was disappointing, but I was like, you know, I don't give a damn about what they thought, because, you know, I know this work is important. This change needs to happen. And whether it's them or the person after them who succeeds them, who makes it happen, or whether it's us pushing beyond them, this work and this change is going to happen.
And just to add on to that, I think like my thoughts on the presentation is that we kind of, you know, got a sense that, you know, Sudbury City Council is inherently racist and that they don't care about the lives of Black, Indigenous, and people of color. The presentation, I think it was Valet or some sort of mining, extracting, or some sort of organization before us, was interested in buying like a plot or a piece of land or something from the city, and literally they spent like a good like 25 minutes just on questions. So when it comes to dollar signs, they're willing to have all these, you know, questions. How is this going to work? Blah, blah, blah. But we're talking about, you know, making sure that BIPOC lives in Sudbury are actually, you know, they have a chance in this community. But then what, you want to be patronizing and say, oh, that, you know, you like the police, or that, you know, that we're all immigrants, and these type of, you know, responses. So I was just, it was crazy to me.
I think for me, I don't really care the fact that we were like really disrespected when we did it. I don't need to be respected by city council. I think that what I want from them is to listen and to just actually genuinely hear what, you know, their community is asking for them. And I think that, like, if I want them to know anything and take anything away from this, that, you know, if they can't listen and they can't do their jobs, they'll be replaced by people who can. I think that, you know, there are people who are on board with this, and if they're not going to be the ones who want to protect lives in their city, then eventually people will come along who do. So
I just wanted to hop on what Darius said there. Yeah, I agree totally. Bottom line, we need supports in place to help our communities thrive, and city council needs to treat these demands with the urgency and severity that it deserves. You know, 80 to 85% of calls to the GSPS are non-criminal issues. So why are we giving them more money when we could be investing into secure and affordable housing for people, or public transit, or public health, or community-led anti-violence programs? So it seems that city council is not paying attention to the research out there, because if they would take some time to educate themselves, they would clearly see that what we're saying is supported by years of research and years of lived experience. And it's important to listen to that lived experience.
we could talk about the dollar signs, right? I mean, their own auditor says that they need to regulate free services. It's in there. It was in the demand. But I think that in general, right? Like, you know, if that's all all they care about is money, you know, there is the money. We have the facts on money to justify this. So.
Beautiful. Yeah, it was quite an experience. So we're going to head into one last question before we wrap up our final panel of the day. So a question from Alex. They say, you are also inspiring and powerful. The work that you've done so far has been phenomenal. What specific barriers have you encountered from your community in the important organizing you're doing? Could you share with us all what you would like to see more of, or what you would like to see change from your city in supporting you? Is there someone who wants to start us off? Shana? Yeah, go for it.
What would I like our city to support us? Well, you know, myself and Rana did a presentation to a community group, and I'll name them because I thought it was a fabulous conversation. It was for the santé communautaire. And the ED of that organization, you know, after a presentation, said that it's up to them to challenge people when they start saying nasty things about Black Lives Matter, to say, actually, they came into the presentation at our organization and to tell you the truth, you're wrong on this and this and this and this, and this is actually what they're about. And so I think in terms of support right now, all the folks who showed up to this this caucus this weekend, and heard our points, heard all of the things that we, you know, that we hold dear, all of the ideas that we have, all of the support and the work that we're doing, should then therefore do that work as well in our community. So I would like them to challenge people online, in conversation, your family, your friends, strangers on the street, and say, actually, Black Lives Matter is an organization that is working to fundamentally change the systems that are oppressing people in our community. And, you know, we need those folks to be accountable to their community and to make that change happen. And, you know, as I said in the last panel, people continually ask, what do we do? What do I do? Like, go do that work, right? That's important work. Have those conversations, have the hard conversations, have those uncomfortable conversations. Because I can tell you, when people ask me those questions, when I'm being touched or told some racist grandma's, you know, thoughts about whatever and what have you, right? Like, I don't want to be in that situation. So can you do some of that work, please? And so that's how I would like this city to support us. And so I think it's, you know, collective, but also individual actions that can definitely bring about the change that we need in the city.
Fantastic, Shana, thank you. Did anyone else have some thoughts on how the community could better support the work, or any thoughts on barriers that you've faced so far?
I mean, in terms of support, donations are always incredibly appreciated. Like, not to be the person that's like, money, money, money. But for people attending this, I want you to know this is a multi-$1,000 event we ran just now. In order to make it free and accessible for the community, this was a multi-$1,000 event that could not be happening without the generosity of our sponsors. So I think a lot of times people are like, oh, donation, like literally, like we have certain sponsors who give us like $20 a month, and it means the world to us. And I want people to really understand how much it means to us, because like we said multiple times, we are not paid for this work. This is volunteer. Like, we all have, like, we have day jobs, or we are students. And then in the evenings is when we dedicate our lives to BLM. So this is all like pro bono free work. So it's like, it's really important when people come out and support us. And the same thing, like when we speak for people's classes or organizations, and when we ask to be paid, the money's not going to us, because as board members, we're not paid. The money goes into the organization, because it takes us time to curate and cultivate all this stuff. You know, we want to advertise as well. We want to support our moderators and our panelists for participation. So I think, you know, these monetary donations are incredibly important to us, because that's what keeps our organization going. We're not government funded. We're not, you know, we don't have regular income or anything. The money that we get is the money from the community, because we are community led and we want to keep doing free things. And I think that's so important. We don't want to charge anybody for anything, because we already are talking about how disproportionate, you know, access to services is in our community, and how how poverty affects our society today, and how it's honestly like it's unjust what is happening. So we want to create these accessible resources for everyone. And in order to do that, we rely on the generosity of everybody else in our community. So I mean, monetary donations is a huge one, but also just small things like resharing, reposting when we share stuff. Because like the amount of times I've sent things to like classmates or whoever, and I'm like, here you go, like share this, and they'll like it, or they'll not attend, or they won't reshare. And then but then they were the first to post a black square on Blackout Tuesday, and I'm like, reshare, actually educate yourselves. And that's one of the biggest ways you can help us, is by educating yourself and educate your family and your friends. It's not my job, like Shana was saying, to educate these racist individuals. It's up to you in order to support the community.
Yeah, and just to add to that about educating yourself, you know, it's kind of your duty and your place of privilege to educate yourself. Like there's, in the age of the 21st century, there's no place to be ignorant of the fact of racism or some of the like intersectional realities that people of color face, or queer people, or, you know, so I mean, it's just barriers that I see in Sudbury is that a lot of people are ignorant. And you know, they're fine with being ignorant and, you know, not wanting to be educated. And, you know, if you want to be a productive and, you know, member of society and participate within these conversations or the political arena, you kind of have to be educated. So, I mean, yeah, I would say that. And also that, you know, city council's racist, so.
Just to add off what TiCarra said, I read a lot of the comments online. I know I shouldn't. I read the comments, and there's something that I wanted to set straight, right? When you're online and you see the Black Lives Matter hashtag or the BIPOC Lives Matter hashtag, realize this statement is bringing attention to the fact that racialized communities are disproportionately affected by violence, disproportionately affected by homelessness, disproportionately affected by mental health. It's bringing attention to racial injustice. So if you're offended by this statement, you need to reevaluate your own privilege and further educate yourself, because it's not about you.
Beautiful. So we're getting quite close to time. I'll just throw it to each of you once more, just for any closing remarks. So once again, I'll start with you, Rana.
I mean, I just want to thank everybody for attending this event, and, you know, thank our sponsors. But most of all, my heart goes out to our task team for coordinating this. I mean, this is work, and I just want to recognize that, you know, like literally I finished work at 4:30, and then I finished work, and then I'm like, BLM, like this is a whole second job, and the work we are doing is like, I just want to really thank everyone for their involvement, and do the work. And that is one of the biggest things. Do the work, do the research. The resources are out there. Don't you dare message your Black friend and ask them if something's racist. Don't you dare message your Black friend and ask them what book to read. Google is a real thing in the 21st century. Use it.
On to you, TiCarra.
Well, first, I'd just like to get a big shout out to my fellow co-president, Shana Brown. She has done so much work with spearheading this initiative. And honestly, without her drive, this wouldn't have happened. And I think, you know, a lot of times, like, I know this might be a little candid, but within our organization, I feel like sometimes, you know, like you just take on so much and you take on the load, and you just want to let you know that you're appreciated, and we love you, and don't cry, and just say thanks. But anyways, yeah, I'm glad that people came out to this event. Make sure to come join us with our future events, and, you know, don't be a bystander. The time is now. This is what's going to be in our history books. You know, 60 years ago, or how there was the civil rights movement. There's still the civil rights movement of 2021, but you know, these moments, these events, they're going to be encapsulated in the textbooks. So let's be a part of this time.
And Darius, we'll go to you for any closing remarks.
I would also probably throw out a huge thank you. I mean, all the work that was put into this really shows, and like, I'd like to thank all of you guys for doing that, and all of the volunteers at BLM, because honestly, this weekend has been awesome. And I think so much learning has been done by a lot of people, and all the hard work over the last couple of months have really showed in these last couple of days. So just very grateful.
Beautiful. Isaac, any closing remarks?
Yeah, just thank you so much to everyone involved and get involved. Yeah, now's the time. If you're not sure, take this as a message, send us an email and we'll get you onboarded in the next few days. We can use as much help as we can, and it's important to get involved locally because you'll make a lot of great, awesome connections.
Beautiful. And Shana, I'll leave the last word to you.
Oh, thank you. I guess, I started this conversation about how Black Lives Matter to me is about hope and joy and connection. And so I just want to say that I love you all, that love is a powerful, powerful emotion. And it's so important in the work that we do. Decolonize love, I think, can make us move mountains. And so I think that this is evidence of that. And I cannot wait to see what we do as we move forward. So thank you all. And I'm going to do a little fancy heart thing.
Beautiful. And that brings us to the end of our Northern Caucus weekend. Here to stay, baby. So we'll be closing out with a short outro video. I want to thank you all so much for attending, for participating in these conversations. Thank you to the task team who organized this. Thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors. I can't wait to see what comes next. Thank you.
Thank you, Shala, and our panelists for cultivating such an exciting discussion. I sincerely hope that everyone enjoyed themselves. As a reminder, keep an eye open for our follow-up survey and an opportunity to be entered for a chance to win a prize pack of items showcasing the beautiful art of our caucus artist, Sonia Catini. Thank you everyone who joined us for the first ever Here to Stay Baby, a Northern Intersectional Caucus. Please stay tuned to our social media for future events. Thank you again to our sponsors, Cambrian College, Canadian Mental Health Association Sudbury Manitoulin, Centre de Santé Communautaire du Grand Sudbury, Centre Victoria pour Femmes, Collège Boréal, Galerie du Nouvel Ontario, Greater Sudbury Public Library, Laurentian University Université Laurentienne, Public Health Sudbury and Districts, Réseau Access Network, Société Alzheimer's Society, Sudbury Action Center for Youth, Thornhill University Women's Gender Sexuality Studies Department. And remember, Here to Stay Baby is not only the header of this event, but a battle cry for marginalized communities residing in Northern Ontario. Our lives have value, we belong, we are here to stay, baby. Thank you for joining us and have a splendid rest of the day.